When you challenge Andrew Wilson on fragility, evil, and religious power, does he have answers? Or just more dodges? Let's find out.
I guess I fail to see how, okay, women cannot physically enforce their own rights leads to
Because
women should not have equal rights, or an egalitarian society is not possible because, I mean, even the way you said it, law and order is only one critical aspect of a well-functioning society. So if that's only one critical aspect, then how can you say, well, this one aspect and the fact that men are going to dominate this one aspect, they're not going to be the sole, that women will exist, but men will dominate this one aspect. How can you say that?
Because they're always going to be making the appeal to men for those rights, and there's no way around it. And so men can collectively take the rights away from women, period. They just can. There's nothing that women can do about this. So egalitarianism in and of itself would just be an illusion. It would literally be a lie. You would be walking around saying that you're equal with men. You have equality with them, while at the same time necessarily having to appeal to them for that equality, which it makes it contradictory, right? How do you appeal to the thing for equality while at the same time saying that you're equal?
Here, he insists that because women have to appeal to men for rights, equality is just an illusion that is fatalism. He ignores the idea that shared vulnerability, as in everyone's rights are fragile, could actually motivate people to work together for justice. When challenged about the pointlessness of egalitarian efforts, he doubles down that men can always give or take away rights. Women never can. So attempts at equality are an illusion. He's saying elsewhere, oh, it's just might makes. I'm not saying might makes right, but everything kind of points to him saying that in all the other ways.
From Iran, Christians in the Middle East don't have rights because they can't enforce them because there's far more.
Yeah, that makes my point, though, not your
What was
point.
that?
That makes my point, not your point. So if ultimately you're saying that enforcement is done, and it's going to be done in even these nations that you are talking about where Christians are oppressed, let's say, that's being done by men. It can't
Yeah.
be done by women. It's an impossibility for it to be done by women because they don't have the capacity to utilize force collectively to make men do what they want. So if you bring up the elderly and you bring up kids having rights, for instance, they can have rights because men give them rights, but men can collectively take those rights away.
So a tukoki is when someone defends a bad action by saying, well, you do it too. It is a dodge. Just because everyone has the same problem doesn't excuse it or make it right. And in Andrew's version, everyone's rights are fragile, so it's just the way things are. That doesn't actually justify the system. He's just avoiding responsibility. And instead of actually defending the fairness or morality of might makes right, he says, well, no system is perfect, so mine is fine. It doesn't address the original criticism and just tries to level the playing field by lowering the bar for everybody.
I agree that your rights can be physically infringed upon, but I don't know if that's the same as saying that because it can be infringed upon or violated, that means the basis of the right doesn't exist. I guess that's my contention.
Well, who gives you these rights other than the agents who are enforcing them on your behalf? You're not giving them to yourself. So you didn't
Yes,
wake up one morning. You
political
didn't wake up
rights
one
are given
morning.
by
Yeah.
political rights are given by men. I'll concede on that. In terms of human rights, I guess I would have to probably research more and think about where I think human rights fundamentally come from. I guess I do see human rights as slightly different than politically afforded rights.
When she admits that political rights are given by men, but wonders if that means human rights don't exist, he never really answers. He just keeps repeating that rights come from whoever enforces them. He ignores the idea that fragile rights don't mean rights don't exist. He treats all rights as only force-based. He again uses the tukoki, your rights are fragile too, and fatalism, if coercion is inevitable, seems to be his favorite. He just dodges every challenge to his force doctrine by saying, injustice is just, well, that's how the world is, and everyone's rights are fragile anyway. None of that actually defends his position.
We have these social constructs and then we adhere to them. So we can have the conversation that it would be wrong for us to punch each other here because we are here for a debate where we have established that we want to talk about things.
Yeah, so
Exactly. So what?
so I'm saying if you're appealing
if you
to
decided that you actually didn't want to do that and you did want to punch me, there's nothing I could do to stop you. So
no, there is. You could use force.
I mean, I'm a little dude.
But the point is like you can use force, whether you're a little dude or a big dude or
But I'm saying outside of that. I agree with you. So
There
I'm
is no
not
outside of
understand-
that.
He's equating we appeal to a norm because it's morally right with we enforce our preferences by force because we like them. He's acting like all claims of rights and morality are just, well, we like this and we have the force to back it up. That erases the distinction between justified norms, aka rule of law, human rights, versus arbitrary preferences like might makes right, fascism, theocracy. By doing that, he falsely claims that both secular liberalism and religious authoritarianism are the same because both use force.
Right. I agree with you. That's why I'm not understanding why this is a
Because what I'm
useful thing to
saying
talk
is
about.
that for when atheists say Christians shouldn't be in power because of my rights, what they're
Yeah.
really saying is Christians shouldn't be in power because we will use force for this arbitrary made up bullshit that we like,
Yeah.
and we don't want them to do anything about it. So
Right.
that is the case, then in the reverse, we can appeal to the same thing.
He tries to undermine the other guy's worldview by saying, if your secular morality is just backed by force, then our Christian morality can be too. Instead of proving inconsistency, he just drags both into the mud. It is a botched reductio ad absurdum. He doesn't show a contradiction in the other person's view. He just says, if yours is bad, then ours being bad is fine too.
Right. And so that's exactly the same thing that you're appealing to with the rest of the Western secular world when it comes to Sharia law. That, well, we have these things that we believe and we like, and we don't want you to come and use force.
Yeah, but you can't tell them why that's bad because you're doing the same thing.
Instead of defending the ethics of Christian coercion, he's like, well, the secular guys do it too, which is another Tukokei fallacy. That does not make his version valid, it just avoids the argument entirely.
In fact, what I'm saying is that you're practicing your own form of Sharia law. It's your own form of Sharia law. I made up a bunch of values. I appeal to them, and I'll use force to uphold them.
Why is that a bad thing?
To uphold them. I'm not the one who makes the claim Sharia law is bad. That would be atheist, right?
He treats morality like a playground shoving match. Whoever has the biggest stick wins, but he just shrugs and says, well, you do it too.
But I'll reduce this to force.
Yeah.
So you have no leg to stand on to tell people who have Sharia law that it's bad.
That's not a defense. That's basically abdicating moral responsibility. He equates all ideologies to brute preference. So he's just super vulnerable to every moral critique that the rest of the debaters in this episode hit him with.
Where are you left if you're a relativist? You can only appeal to relativism. My worldview has to be just as valid as yours. So then therefore we both appeal to physical force. What else could we ever appeal to?
Here Andrew claims that if you're a relativist, the only thing you can appeal to is force, and that my worldview is just as valid as yours. He says all shoulds, what ought to happen, really boil down to whoever has the power to enforce them. This is the is-ought fallacy. He acts like because force is used, that means force should decide everything. He never explains why that should be the case.
Honestly, I am not totally sure how we get from there to appealing to physical force.
Because what else could you appeal to other than just an enforcement to your preferences?
Appeal to for what? For
any ought. Every ought would just become force. You would just say the things I want to see different in the world are because I want to see them different in the world. And then that would require force. So relativism will reduce to a force doctrine.
But I'm curious why Christian ethics wouldn't also reduce to a force doctrine.
Well, the Christian ethic can make a determination between an is and an ought. So we would make the ought claim that you should not utilize force for what we would consider oppression, which is hardly patriarchy. That's not oppressive.
When asked why Christian ethics don't also reduce to force, he just says, well, they're different. Without really explaining, he gives his own view a free pass, which is special pleading.
Tell me why. Tell me why it's immoral to do that.
To imprison, kidnap women to give birth so that future generations can go on.
Yeah, that's just restating the question. Can you tell me why it would be immoral for me to do that?
There she says things like kidnapping and essay are obviously immoral. He dodges by demanding that she explain why they're wrong while never giving any moral reason himself. It's a loaded demand. He's asking for a standard he can't meet and leaves him with moral nihilism. So if only force counts, he can't say why anything is really wrong except that it's not currently being enforced.
So how can you say your rights don't matter because you're physically inferior when that differentiation is what justifies your rights in the first place? That's why we even establish rights.
You haven't justified rights at all. You just say this is what justifies them, the fact that there's inferiority between different people. Okay, is that the justification? That the justification for rights is based on Inferiority? Is that what you're saying is your justification
Not
for a
inferiority, I
right?
said differences.
The differences is the
Saying if the person
justification?
was as intellectually and physically capable as the person next to
Mhm.
them, I don't think we would need to establish human rights.
Okay, so
Probably.
you think that rights then come from your mind. They don't come from any external source, just people make them up.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, if absent something for you to ground this axiom on, unless that's all it is, just like a pure axiom to your own preferences, you'd have to tell me what you're justifying having a right on, where it comes from. Where does a right actually come from? Other than your mind, you made it up. If that's the case, then you have a big problem.
So here he's just pushing her to say rights are based on inferiority, then dismisses every possible grounding for rights except men's enforcement. He's claiming to be neutral, but then calls things like feminism and women's rights absurd.
So they're begging at the altar for men to enforce their rights while at the same time saying that they're equal to men. It's absurd. They're not equal to men. They're never going to be. There's never going to be an egalitarian society.
Which is a value judgment.
But I'm curious why Christian ethics wouldn't also reduce to a forced doctrine.
Well, the Christian ethic can make a determination between an is and an ought. So we would make the ought claim that you should not utilize force for what we would consider oppression, which is hardly patriarchy. That's not oppressive. But yeah, we would make a justified moral claim. And that's how we would move forward in a moral conversation or in a not. But from your case, it's total and complete relativism. And you know it's relativism. Whatever worldview you come up with, absent religion, is going to reduce to relativism. And so we're just going to be right back to force again.
So when she asks him why Christian ethics won't also just boil down to force, he says, well, Christianity can separate is from facts from morals, so it's different. A special pleading, he just claims his worldview escapes the critique without showing how. It's less coercive in reality. He also sets up a false dichotomy, saying it's either religion, which supposedly gives morals, or total moral chaos and force. He ignores that secular or non-religious systems can also have real moral rules. It's also a non sequitur, just saying, well, Christianity says not to use force doesn't prove it avoids coercion or that Christian societies are non-coercive.
What I'm saying is that if it is the case that the only thing you're appealing to is something which is made up and saying, we made it up, but we really like it, so we use force to defend it, then you can't really go out to after a religion that you think is made up who appeals to this made up thing and uses force, because it's the same thing you're doing.
No, but that is the doctrine of Islam and Christianity, and previously is to enforce your religious beliefs by force.
That's the doctrine of the atheists now.
Atheism doesn't have a doctrine. Atheism is beliefless, right? So
then what do you appeal to?
I just reject your Santa Claus.
So then what do you appeal to for the use of force?
Well, at the end of every rule and law is a gun. Right?
Yeah, so what do you appeal to? You appeal to
anything.
You don't appeal to rights?
Logic and reason.
Logic and reason.
Yeah.
Are those objectively true?
We can get into an hour-long discussion about objective truth.
When the other guy appeals to logic and reason, Andrew distracts by questioning if those are objectively true, which is a red herring that avoids the actual point about religious coercion.
Do you believe that women ought to have rights as well, or you're just talking purely about the what is?
Well, I've already covered that. Right. So, yes, of course, I think that they ought to have the same rights ordinarily that I would ascribe in a Christian virtue ethic to anybody. Sure.
Okay. Got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't think that that's in any way contrasted to anything I say.
No,
I'm just saying that even then, I would still understand on the is front that those rights, whether I think they come from God or not.
If God gives rights, then men shouldn't be able to take them away.
I still believe that men would be the ones who are going to ultimately be the enforcement arm for them, and the ones who could take them away from me or give them to me whenever they so choose to do so, which historically they've done many times.
He never addresses whether Christian power is less coercive, he just repeats his men enforce rights claim. That's a non sequitur, his answer doesn't follow from the question, and a classic dodge. Overall, when challenged about the coercion in Christian or secular systems, he never truly addresses the question. He claims his worldview is special, but never proves it. He flips the arguments back onto his opponents. He shifts the topic and avoids the real issue.